So, greetings. My name is Ryan. I've been active on social media in various capacities. My primary objective had been trying to educate parents about how to keep their kids safe online. Unfortunately, that's been an abysmal failure. Parents are not really concerned about what their kids are doing online until something happens. So, I've created a tremendous amount of material to help and assist parents that's really being used in the therapist community. When social services has been deployed to a home because there's a problem, and the social services and the psychological counselors need resources to help their kids, I've been providing it through that channel. So there's not much of a public need until parents get their kids in trouble, and then the attorneys and the psychologists and psychiatrists are involved. But one of my passions has been about asserting and standing and holding on to my constitutionally protected freedoms. Now, my freedoms and my rights come from God, natural law, and I live in a country which has established supplemental laws to put further constricted guidelines about the freedoms which God has granted me, being a creature of the Creator. And I abide by those laws. Now, on occasion, there may be times where I may transgress a civil statute, such as that I may be driving a vehicle and exceed the posted speed limit, and I receive a reprimand for that. So, and I understand that. I don't necessarily agree with it. If I'm in control of the car, I'm not causing any danger, and I'm safe, and I haven't affected anyone, I don't feel I should be financially penalized by that. But our state and our citizens come to accept that kind of regulation over us. So I abide by that, and I have my day in court, and I'll have that conversation with the judge, and he'll make whatever decision he wants in the court of secrets. But I am a more educated citizen, that I spend the time to learn what my rights are, and I assert them lawfully. And there's a community out on the internet called First Amendment Auditors, which also are very educated and versed, and they're continually increasing their knowledge about what their rights are. And there's a primary reason for that, because they've uncovered the double standard that exists in our country. United States citizens inside the court of law, ignorance is not a defense of the law. Not knowing the law is not a defense inside the court. However, if you are being prosecuted by the state or by an officer or a public servant, they don't have the same standard. Their standard is reasonableness. What a reasonable person would do in a similar situation is the standard which they must adhere to. And unfortunately, officers are responsible for enforcing the law. They're law enforcement officers. However, they take that responsibility a little bit too far, and they use their authority, their station in our society, and take actions outside of their maintaining their responsibility to the law. They can act under the rule of law by enforcing laws, but when they go too far, they're acting under their authority and acting what is called under the color of law. But the only ability for us to hold law enforcement to the rule of law and their violation of color of law is we have an additional burden. We cannot assume that an officer knows all the laws and statutes in which they're enforcing, because the courts have determined it's not reasonable for a civil servant to know all the laws in which they're in charge to enforce. That's what the courts say. So we have to assume that the civil servants are not reasonable because they're not held to the standard to know all the laws. Our obligation as a servant, as a private citizen, the courts state that we are obligated to educate the unreasonable person. That doesn't mean we may not be violated under color of law, but we have to take the time to educate that unreasonable that public servant. So the things that we need to do is call them out when they're violating the law under the color of law. So if they're going to ask you to get out of your car, that's unreasonable. Now, they will try to make statements to say for officer safety, but you have a Fourth Amendment protection to be safe and secure in your properties, papers, properties, and effects. You are expected to assert your safety inside of the car. Unless there is visible evidence that there's a weapon within your reach, they have no reason to extract you from the car. But you have to tell them that. And that I am able to be safe and secure. Now, if you're going to do something based upon a false statement, you have to say, "Officer, I do not consent, but do not recognize my lack of consent as resistance. I will act upon your unlawful request because you're asking me to give up my Fourth Amendment protection for something that you are stating falsely, and I will not comply. I do not consent, but I will exit my car." You have to make that choice as to how long you're going to stand on that line. So part of my education is I need to educate private citizens because they don't know what their rights are. And whenever you see the cherries and berries go off, you have this fight or flight instinct and you're thinking, "Oh no, I'm in trouble." And you're now going to be threatened and intimidated and coerced into doing things that you wouldn't naturally do with a conversation with somebody on the street. A casual person approaching you on the street and demanding things of you, it's not reasonable. But the reasonability disappears when the lights go off. So for me as an advocate, I do my own First Amendment protected activities because I am doing research and I'm getting public records requests and I document that for my own purposes. People hire me to go out and gather information for them for distribution. I am doing compliance audits on behalf of organizations. And when I go into the public space, I'm continually confronted by public servants and law enforcement. And they want to know what I'm doing. And honestly, it's none of their business what I'm doing, who I'm working for, what my name is. I have no obligation to give them any information. So I'm going to give you a very simple example that often winds up in a dispute where an officer is going to act under color of law or a security guard is going to act under color of law. Because I have been afflicted with cancer and have gone through numerous rounds of treatment and continuing treatments, I have to visit medical facilities. I have to go get MRIs and CAT scans and PET scans and blood tests and infusion treatments, and the list goes on and on. So I have a routine schedule of what I need to do to fight the disease that's affected me. So when I do this, I've been asked by national health organizations to do a compliance audit to confirm with that the employees of the clinic or the facility are complying with HIPAA. All I do is I walk in and I'm documenting my entire process that is visible in public. When I go back into a private room, my information should be closed, but I sometimes record inside of those areas, sometimes I don't. I'm not precluded from doing such. But oftentimes I'm confronted by people in the lobby or at the counter as to why I'm recording. Now, the routine places I go, they've gotten used to this. They're the ones that are supposed to secure and protect personally identifiable information. They're responsible for securing it. Now, it's really interesting. When I go in and I get the little bracelet put on my hand that has my name, has my phone number on it, and also has another code on it, which happens to be my social security number. Not the last 4 digits, but my social security number. Now, what I need to do is I need to review that information, need to sign it, that it is correct and accurate, and then I put it on my wrist. Well, when I go in to check in, they ask me my name and they fillet out all of these wristbands right in front of me, and I'm able to see everybody's name, phone number, and social security number at the counter. Now, if you've ever been into a health facility, you'll recognize that there's generally a line of people and there's not much distance between person 1, person 2, person 3. You're kind of like in a queue waiting to go in. Well, that personally identifiable information should not be available for public view. That's a violation of HIPAA. If I can see it or I can hear it, I can record it. My camera is an extension of my being. In accordance with the Americans with Disabilities Act, certain people have to have a camera in order to assist them both for hearing and for sight. So ADA says that somebody can use a camera for disability reasons. So anyway, I often get confronted when I may be walking with the camera. The people at the clinic will say I'm not allowed to record, and I'm in a public space. I am allowed to record. Security guards will get involved, and police officers will be called, and I have a cordial conversation as long as they're cordial with me. And oftentimes they try to push the color of law on me and try to cite me for loitering or trespassing or causing a disturbance. And they have a list of things that they attempt to charge me in order to get me to give up my ID. Well, in my state and in 42 states in the Union, we have no requirement to provide our ID unless we are in the process of committing a crime, have committed a crime, or about to commit a crime. Those are the reasons in which a private citizen would be obligated to provide an ID, but only at the time of arrest. So you have to be under arrest for having committed a crime, about to commit a crime, or a crime is in process. Well, photography is not a crime. You cannot convert a constitutionally protected activity into a criminal act. So citizens are ignorant of the law. They don't know what the law is. They don't know what their rights are. And when the authority confronts them, they immediately submit. And as I was having a conversation with one of the people that was contracting me, and she said, if you have nothing to hide, just give them the information. And I'm saying, I can't have a conversation with you. You don't know the law. And it would take me too long to inform you of what my rights are, that you're immediately going to jump to, I need to surrender to the authority when I have no obligation to surrender to the authority. So I'm sorry, ma'am, I can't continue this conversation with you. Can you transfer me to your supervisor or something? Whatever. So my education is twofold. I'm speaking to private citizens when I engage them in public. My other level of education is speaking to the civil servants or the public servants. And I want to give them the ability to understand that I am not here to disrupt or to bait or to intimidate or to do anything. I'm a law-abiding citizen, and I'm performing law-abiding tasks, and I may be hired by somebody, but my business is not your business. I don't have an obligation to tell you anything about myself. The first level of our conversation would be consensual. Officer, is this a consensual conversation, or am I being detained? And they have to have cause for detainment. But unfortunately, the officers are not educated either, and they exercise their authority unlawfully, and they will unlawfully detain me. I can't tell you how many times I've been unlawfully detained. It's unbelievable. Because if I do not consent, they're going to create something and say, I'm causing a disturbance. I'm detaining you for investigative purposes. Now, they may choose to put handcuffs on me in that detainment, and they'll say, we're detaining you for investigation, and they'll attempt to pat me down and put handcuffs on me. And I'm used to this. And I say, officer, you're taking this beyond a detainment, that you are arresting my movement. You have no articulable facts that I have committed a crime, about to commit a crime, and you are going to conduct an investigation by holding me, and you're not doing an investigation. You want me to assist you in your investigation, and you're going to arrest my movements. Words are important, folks. The fact that they want to call it a detainment, no, they've arrested my movement. My movement has been stopped. I have many weapons of death that can be perpetrated against me, and I have to be stationary and restricted. So my movement has been arrested. That's what the court says. I have to educate the officer that the words that you're using have meaning, and I'm not going to let you wiggle out of your unlawful activity. I'm going to be respectful. I'm not going to resist. I don't consent, but I'll comply. But I'm not going to aid you in your investigation by drilling me with questions where I have no obligation. I have a Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. I can choose to answer at my own discretion. And at any time I can say, I am not going to answer any other questions without the presence of my attorney. Oh, you only need your attorney when arrested. Sir, I've been arrested. My movement has been arrested. So I will wait until you get me my attorney. They're not used to someone asserting their rights and understanding the steps that I need to do to tell them what the law is. Smith versus Cummings, Terry v. Ohio. I need to cite the case precedent. I need to cite the statute in which they are violating me, that they're unlawfully arresting me for an investigative purpose. I have to assert those rights. It appears that my channel has frozen, which is not surprising on this particular platform. Bear with me a second. So if you look above me, I have two links where I've been providing outward-facing communication. I want to educate the private citizens, and I want to educate the public servants. I, in my activities, believe a proactive approach is more consistent with the way that I want to interact with public servants. I set forth a process that if I'm going to be traveling in a particular area and that I'm going to be conducting this kind of compliance audit or verification audit, that I will notify those in the chain of command of my presence coming. And I have drafted a very nice email that goes out to a town mayor or a council, city council manager or city manager. I will send it out to the district attorney and the public defendant. I will send the email out to the chief of police, and I'll send it out to the county sheriff or the sheriff of the region. And I send it, this information is, I just want to inform you that I'm a private citizen that is going to be traveling through your area, and I'm going to be conducting First Amendment protected activities, and I will be performing an audit, and I will be gathering information in support of these activities. Now, I'm not doing this for commercial purposes. I'm not putting it out there on the market. I'm doing information gathering on behalf of concerned citizens. This is not for monetary gain, meaning I'm not going to produce a video and put it out and charge admission to watch the video. So I do that preemptively. I don't tell them, oh, I also send it to the public information officer at the police department. And I don't tell them when I'm coming or what period of time is it going to happen in the next week, next day, next 3 months. It's not important for that. You know, there's another person I send it to, and that's the district attorney of the state district attorney. So I cover all bases to let them know that I have no ill will, no ill intent, and I'm going to be gathering this information. So in the event that I get unlawfully detained, I say, just want to let you, officer, just want to inform you that I have notified those people in your chain of command that I would be doing this. And I'm not responsible for their ability to disseminate information to you, but I have done this. And in my backpack are all of the things relative to what I'm doing right here that are none of your business. I have all of my communication that's gone through the chain of command. I have satellite photos of what is public and private space. I have GIS surveys as to what's public and private space. I have the civil statutes that provide me the ability to do what I'm doing lawfully. I have the constitutional documents and the case precedents. So in the conversation of the things that I've told you today, in my backpack are all my reference material. So I am prepared. I am prepared. I don't choose to have this conversation with you, officer. You approached me. I'm a law-abiding citizen. Am I detained or am I free to go? And they will often prolong the detainment. But my education is meant to educate those first line of people, the first people that I interact with. I will educate them and say, whoa, 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 don't get freaked out. Don't get freaked out. There's cameras in here. The camera mounted on your ceiling is no different than the camera that's being held in my hand. So don't freak out. Don't panic. Don't panic. I have no ill will, no intent. I'm just documenting this transaction. As a private citizen, I have the ability to freely record my public servants in the performance of their public duties. Don't freak out. If you need additional information, I'd be pleased to pull this out and help educate you. I'm not I come with a different intention. My intention comes upon a presupposition that public servants enter into the role of public service because they want to support the community. In their heart, they want to serve their community. They also want to have safety and security like you and I like to have safety and security. They want to have that. And when I approach it that, and I also think that they want to have a respectful relationship between those that they serve and those that they work with. I believe those are foundations to the core of who these people are. And that camera may be a little bit of a trigger thing, and I just need to calm them down. Now, many people, when they're encountering public servants, they just want to assert their authority over them and be confrontational and kind of escalate things. That's not my deal. That's not my goal. That's why I don't have videos on YouTube among this sensation of First Amendment auditing. That's not who I am. I don't need to instigate and poke and prod. My goal is to educate, and the best way to educate is to do things on a peaceful, respectful, reasonable manner. Now, that's not to say that the people on the other side have the same goal, that they want to exercise their authority, and I understand that, and I need to be in control to help de-escalate them. They've been trained for de-escalation. I have to train myself on how to help de-escalate them. So my education that I do is all proactive. I do it with my feet on the street and I do it with my mouth, but it doesn't stop there. If I go into a public office, let's say like the DMV for instance, and I take my camera and I'm going to document my process through getting my license renewed, and I'm walking through with my camera, and public citizens are freaking out. You don't have my permission to record. Now, I believe that I have a choice to make. I can either engage them or I can choose not to engage them. I choose to engage them. And I say, listen, I understand this may be a little unusual for you. I just want to first state that there is no expectation of privacy when you're in public. And if you would like some information to learn more about what's happening right now, I invite you to go to this link while you're sitting here and check it out. I really don't want to engage with you because unfortunately people will consider this a disturbance. I'm trying to be very reasonable. I want to be respectful. I'm not here for you. It's unfortunate that you got on my camera, but there's no expectation of privacy. I have no ill will or ill intent. But if you want to learn more about why I'm doing what I'm doing, here is a link. Take your smartphone and you can go there, and I provide free educational information as to what I am doing. Not here for you. And it's your choice whether you want to go to that link and learn more. If you don't want to go to that link, in my backpack, I have a piece of paper and I just hand it to them. And I go, shh, I'm just going to continue what I'm doing. Here's some information. If other people are concerned, share that information with them. So I don't want to instigate or inflate people that may be triggered. They're like, whoa, what's this guy doing with the camera? Well, there's cameras already in here. So let's chill out. So then I have one level of education which goes to the private citizen, and I have that resource in my backpack and I give it to them. Then I next approach the DMV clerk or assistant or whomever, and they get freaked out. And I said, listen, this is, I'm just documenting my process. It's a lawful thing to do. And if you're not sure about this, I give you the ability. I have some information. Here's a link you can go to. I'm not doing anything wrong. And they often refuse service. They often refuse me the ability to have service. And they'll call a security guard and they'll call the police. And I have to have that educational material available to all of them. And then the goal is that I need to educate the citizens so that they don't freak out and they start learning what their rights are and applying them, or not. They can submit to the authority all they want, but they can apply them. I can educate the public servants. I can educate the public servants' chain of command, and then I'm educating law enforcement. So, like the DMV may have a policy that says there's no recording inside of their building. That's a policy. The policy is a request to me. I abide by laws. I'm not an employee. I don't have a contract inside of these public entities that I am responsible to adhere to their policies. Their policies are not publicly available for me to know or learn, and I'm not held to the standard of adhering to a policy. Now there are very limited instances where policy does have some level of law enforcement, and they're very, very finite, very limited, where a policy has not same standard of enforcement as a law. But I understand what those are, and I've encountered those, and I've addressed those. So I need to educate the public servants, and then I got to educate the law enforcement. Law enforcement is the most difficult, or security, most difficult, because that authority and their chain of command and the culture of following orders provides a wall, a mental wall. And that mental wall is very difficult for them to climb over, or for me to climb over, because that wall blocks them, that their chief said to them they must arrest me. And they have to fabricate something to arrest me. And the chief may tell him to arrest me for causing a disturbance, arrest me for criminal trespass. And the chief will tell them something. He's not a witness to anything, but these guys have to follow the orders of their chain of command, and they will bring me in and they will do whatever they need to do unlawfully, and then I will have to fight that. That's an education as well. Because I'm equipped, and the way I conduct myself, when I am confronted with unlawful acts to the point of detainment, to the point of arrest, to being taken downtown, they have to release me. They can't issue me a charge because they didn't have any probable cause with articulable facts that could get an affidavit, a probable cause affidavit signed by a judge that would warrant an arrest. Now, I may be inconvenienced, I may be taken downtown and transported and kidnapped, but each one of those steps is an act under color of law, not under rule of law, and they've got themselves hemmed up in a civil rights violation. I know my laws. I'm constantly learning my laws, and I understand the imbalance between ignorance is not a defense and that I have to educate an unreasonable person. I can never attribute reasonableness to an officer. I can't, because it's not reasonable. They know all the laws that they're in charge of enforcing. That's not reasonable, and the courts have dictated that. They say that it's reasonable that a citizen should surrender their rights when approached by an officer. That's not reasonable because it violates my constitutional protections. So the judge would try to argue on behalf of the prosecutor that why didn't you just submit? And I don't have an obligation to submit. I didn't do anything wrong. All of these charges did not have a first cause of action. And the judge demanding my ID, I resist providing my ID because I haven't broken a law. All of these things, resisting arrest, causing a disturbance, failure to ID, that list of things is missing the first probable cause. And I am not obligated to ID. And I don't carry my ID. My ID is secure in my vehicle because that is when I'm required to have my ID, is if I am breaking some civil statute in my vehicle. The contract that I have with my state says that I need to present that ID. You know, I never surrender my ID. My ID is a person, paper, property, and effect of mine. It's a piece of property of mine. I am required to present it. I will present it to an officer. I will not surrender it to an officer. When I surrender my driver's license, now all of a sudden I am in custody. I am in custody when I have surrendered that document because I cannot travel at that point. I cannot leave because I would be leaving illegally because I don't have my license. So I am trapped. But I am legally responsible to present them, so I take my driver's license and I push it up against the window. Here are my documents, officer. My window's pretty much closed, only open that much. Sir, I can hear you fine. You don't need to hear me because I'm going to remain silent. Here's my information. Proceed as needed. Very respectful. I'm sorry, officer. I'm going to just assert my rights. Please don't put your hands on my property. It's my car. I didn't give you permission to touch my property. Stay away from my property. Here's the information that you require. You want to issue me a citation? Go ahead. Here's my information. Whatever. So up above me is a source of communication that I provide to private citizens, to public servants. And when I'm having these conversations, I'm having very limited conversations with the First Amendment community, because the First Amendment audit community really thrives in the environment of YouTube, and it's kind of like docudrama. All different types of characters out there, all different types of personalities, all with different objectives, on how they want to conduct themselves when interacting with public servants or with law enforcement. And I'm not disparaging them. They do what they do. I do what I do. But I comment in there, and I want to give them a little bit of experiential nuggets. So I watched a video this morning of a gentleman that was approached by an officer while he was filming a federal facility, completely lawful. And one officer was there, then two officers were there, then three officers showed up. And I made a comment after the video was done. I said, it would have been really interesting when you were being detained, as the third officer approached, to say to the officers, gentlemen, it appears that I am involved in the middle of a conspiracy right now, because he's video recording it. And when you have two or more people conspiring against you, 15 U.S.C. 182, you have protections under U.S. Code from being a victim of a conspiracy. And when two officers or three officers are gathering their heads together on how to hem you up, to fabricate a crime under the color of law, not the rule of law, the color of law, it would be beneficial if you just said that. Said it respectfully. Officers, it appears right now that I've got three of you surrounding me. Now there's a fourth person surrounding me, that I'm in the midst of a conspiracy. That I don't have legal protection here. You've unlawfully detained me, and I'm involved in a conspiracy that you're trying to do something criminal against me. Something felony against me. You have just perpetrated assault on my person by arresting me and restricting my movement, and I'm fearful that you're going to kidnap me next. And I just want to state for the record that you all are conspiring against me. Now, they're still going to do what they're going to do, but it's just a matter of you solidifying that those people are not reasonable, you're a reasonable person, and that you're asserting your rights, and you're just putting it on the record. These are very difficult things if you're involved with that authority, that your mouth can run away and that you think that you can reason yourself out of an altercation, but you cannot. They have ultimate authority and power, and they say, we make the first decision, but you take it out in the courts. And that's true. They're not going to try your case on the streets. They're going to act against you and let the court figure it out. And you know why they can do that? Because there is no consequence for them when acting under the color of law. When they act under the color of law, they are immune from any litigation from a citizen. That doesn't make sense, does it? But that's the way our system is set up. The only way for an unlawful act by an officer to have any level of accountability is based upon the citizen educating that officer and having them, the officer, make the decision. I've told you, you're violating Terry v. Ohio. You're violating Smith versus Cummings. And I tell them the Supreme Court has ruled that I only need to be 15 feet away from you, 15 feet or more for officer safety. You approached me, officer. You violated that, not me. And we have to say these things. And if they reject learning or investigating based upon the information I tell them, they're no longer reasonable. The court affords them the flexibility of reasonableness, but when they've been confronted with the ability to be educated and they reject it, they're not being reasonable. So that reasonableness standard steps aside, and now I have the ability to pierce what's called qualified immunity. Not that I will be granted the piercing of qualified immunity, because the process and the bureaucracy and the unions and the relationships with county governments, they get to make a decision as to whether that qualified immunity is protected or not. Elected official says, nah, we'll pay this off. The county will pay this penalty. We won't make the officer suffer the consequences of his unlawful actions. But this is based upon my education and that I'm trying to empower and equip and educate. Now, there's another side of the equation. So I said I'm educating two levels of people: private citizens, public servants. But then there's another layer, and that's the public servants, which are contracted by they're private citizens contracted by public servants. This is the security guard people. That are a security guard is stationed at a courthouse or a Health and Human Services, wherever there's a security guard that is not a state employee. They're under contract with the state. They often have a sidearm, and they have the ability to enforce policies. But unfortunately, policy is not law, and they are frequently in the crosshairs of violating civil rights. Their employer carries insurance to protect them in the role of their job in enforcing the policies of a facility. But when they go too far and they assault a citizen, or they batter a citizen, or they do something unlawful against a citizen outside their scope of responsibility, they don't have qualified immunity. So when I confront a security guard, I need to be more careful and protect him and say, listen, I just want to make you aware, if you do these things, this will affect you personally. And I don't want to affect you personally. I will totally get my pound of flesh out of your company, but this is going to affect you personally. If you violate me, you don't have that qualified immunity protection, and I want to give you the ability to know before you take these steps. Read this. Don't violate my rights, because it's going to cost you a fair amount of money. And whether you have a bank account or a boat or not, or I may get that 60-inch plasma TV you have sitting in your family room. I might get your Xbox One, or the judge will award me fair compensation out of product and materials if you don't have that bank account. And that's not my objective, sir, ma'am, to extract that from you, but I also am going to assert my rights, and if you're going to violate them, you have a consequence. This is not a get-out-of-jail-free card. There's one more layer deep, and that's the insurance companies that are insuring the security guards, the FOPs that are providing insurance for the law enforcement to litigate the enforcement. When I step into that realm and I am acting reasonably and I'm educating the unreasonable officer, and it winds up getting into a civil rights violation with law enforcement or a security guard, the mothership is going to be funding that legal defense. So what happens in the extreme circumstances, if it becomes a very costly legal defense for the police union or the parent company, their insurance rates go up 30%. If the employees, like the union members, are paying, their dues go up in order to pay the expense of that litigation, when they should have been just acting lawfully, but they stepped outside the law, and no other officer said, stop, this is going to sting us. You're going to make our dues go up. There's an unintended consequence that you may not have seen, and he may come after your money personally. So I try to provide resources in education. That's why I send that email out in advance. I notify the chain of command and say, this is what I'm doing, and if you've had that training, great. We have no concern. We have no issues. If your folks are familiar with what the laws are and the rights regarding public photography and constitutional rights, and your officers are trained, fantastic. You've got nothing to worry about. I'm a reasonable person. I'm respectful, but I'm going to be asserting my rights. But if you don't have that training, it's up to you that you need to educate those people that this is what's happening and be preemptive about it. And if you choose to say, well, we'll just let the chips fly where they are because you got a workload and you can't be bothered with this nuisance, and we'll let it play out the way it plays out, that's fine too. That's fine too. I'm a law-abiding citizen. So for those people that may see this video on my YouTube channel, which I don't expect many to see it because you know me, I'm censored on all social media that's out there. My voice can't be heard on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube. Those Silicon Valley controlled monopolies restrict this kind of communication. So this communication is really going into the domain of people that want to be educated and that I have a relationship with, that are in these private environments and that I do these private broadcasts, because the public really doesn't care. The First Amendment community, really, the people that are participating in the YouTube comments, they don't care either. They're just a bunch of celebrity followers, and they don't choose to be educated. And the auditors, for whatever their personality is, they have various degrees of education and some of them say, I'm just going to give back the officer in kind the way he treats me. You treat me disrespectfully, I'm going to treat you disrespectfully. You're going to set the cadence. I think there was a great metaphor that James Freeman, who's a well-known auditor, that he had an encounter, and he was quite transparent with the officer, and he said, listen, you approached me. I've got the camera. You stepped on the stage. You are now the performer. I'm just going to document your performance. It's up to you how to choose to perform. And the officers say, well, you baited me. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. A camera is not bait. Me standing here doing a constitutionally protected activity, you could have come up to me cordially and say, what are you doing? And I would say, sir, good day to you. What's your name and badge number? Hopefully they provide it. If they don't, they're violating policy, but assume they don't provide it. Just say, well, I'm just going to state this very briefly. You failed to identify yourself, and that's against your policy, but I can't require you to do that. Generally, when you are in an encounter with a public citizen and they request that information, you're obligated to provide 3 forms of ID, but you chose not to do that. So neither here nor there, I just got it on record. Right now I'm involved in a consensual conversation, and I'm willing to give you some limited information in this consensual conversation as to what I'm doing. As you can see, officer, I'm standing in a public easement. There is no traffic that I am impeding or blocking in any way. Right now, I am exercising a First Amendment protected activity and gathering information for public dissemination. This is not for commercial purposes, it's for my own use. So I have no ill will, no ill intent. I have no weapons on my person whatsoever. I do not consent to any searches or seizures of my person, papers, properties, or effects. Am I being detained? And they may come back and say something else. And you say, officer, respectfully, am I being detained? And they may say something else and not answer the question. Say, officer, am I being detained? And they say, no, you're not detained, but I want to have a conversation. When they say you are not detained, you say, very good. Have a great day, sir. And I remove myself 10, 20 feet away. I continue doing what I'm doing, but I disconnect from the conversation. Now, the officer may choose to follow me or to get in with my proximity. I say, if they continue to follow me, I'm still respectful. They're on the stage. They own the stage, but I have my own stage, and I'm going to conduct myself to show that I am a reasonable person. I'm saying, officer, I understand we're in a public easement. You have as much right to be here as I do. I respectfully request that you do not impede or infringe on my First Amendment protected activities of gathering information. Please don't obstruct my camera. Please do not obstruct my microphone. Please do not interrupt me as I'm narrating to my audience as to what I'm doing. And I step further away. If he continues to follow, I have another narrative that I say. And I said, listen, officer, apparently my messaging is not getting through to you. I wish to not engage with you. And at this point, you are stalking me to disrupt me. And I'm going to request a supervisor on presence to eliminate you from harassing me at this point forward. But I do this respectfully. I'm not argumentative. Now, everybody's personality is different as to how they handle that encounter. And we have our own process or ability to control our fight or flight instincts. And I don't harbor any ill will for anybody the way that they choose to do it. You reap what you sow. And I want to sow something specific to my goals and objectives. They may not align with yours or First Amendment auditors, but that's what you do is what you do, what I do is what I do. And I'm not looking to influence them, maybe to sow some seeds of thought as to how it might impact what you do or how you do it or the true intentionality about what you're doing. But it's garbage in, garbage out. So that encounter, as James Freeman says, the gentleman steps on the stage. My response is up to me. The auditor's response is up to them, depending upon what their goals and objectives are. So in here, I'm clear, I'm transparent, and I'm authentic with my goals and objectives, and I communicate to various audiences. I communicate to the private citizen, I communicate to the public servant, I communicate to the law enforcement, and I communicate to the insurance and or the security community. I say, whoever is coming in here, I have a resource for you. I don't want to cause conflict. If you want to know what I'm doing, here's your opportunity to learn. If you want to wait until I am done, I'd be pleased to have that conversation with you. But I am here for a purpose. It's not up to me to declare or I express to you what my purpose is. It's my personal private business. I don't have an obligation to talk to you. I don't need your permission. I'm going to be a law-abiding citizen. And if you're concerned about it, then here is the resource I give for you to learn more. And you can choose to ignore it or participate in it. But leave me alone. Leave me alone. Very respectfully. So I'm going to be sharing this video on YouTube. It's obvious that the Periscope stream got completely corrupted. They don't like me broadcasting. So I will share this on YouTube. And hopefully some First Amendment auditors will benefit from some of the things I talked about. I invite people to go to that link. Go to my Facebook page and learn kind of my strategy. Not suggesting my strategy is better than anyone else's. Not saying that whatsoever. My objectives are clear, and I have documented the process in which I want to do to maximize the peacefulness, the respectfulness. I understand there's a place for authority in our society. Those are the guardrails on the highway of life. And I appreciate those guardrails on the highway of life. I understand my responsibilities as my own private citizen that I don't expect the police to protect me or to serve me. I have no expectation of that. Why? Because the Supreme Court has ruled that there is no obligation for a policeman to protect or serve me. During Hurricane Katrina, hordes were coming out of the inner city, rioting and looting people's homes. And people needed to stand in defense of their property, and they were armed to protect themselves. And the police and law enforcement came in and stripped the weapons away from private citizens so that they would have more victims of the looters. They validated that citizens, under the threat of death, will give up their weapons. I don't expect the police to protect me. They're not going to protect my property. They don't have any lawful responsibility or obligation to do that. They respond to calls of service. The calls of service happen after a crime has been committed. They weren't there when the crime occurred. It is up to us to be, when that crime occurs, to be able to protect ourselves from that crime. Because the only time the police are there is after. The call for service is after the crime. I understand my responsibility to my wife, to my daughter, to my dog, to my property, to my extended family, that I know that the police aren't there to protect them. I appreciate those that feel that they have a desire to do that, but I don't want to put them in a place where they need to make an instant decision to determine who is the victim and who is the perpetrator, and unfortunately make a wrong split-second choice and determine me to be the criminal and shoot me. I don't want that. I understand when they get into those situations that they have to make impulsive, spontaneous decisions, and I want to stop that. I go, whoa, back off. But anyway, I'm going to share this. People, if you happen to see this on YouTube or you stop by my YouTube channel, I would appreciate some comments, some feedback. And if you're one of those YouTube people that is just kind of there as a stalker or somebody to sow discontent, not using sound reason or logic, and you post nasty stuff, I'll let you do it. I'll let you make those comments. to the point that they're not violating the law. You violate the law inside my comment string, I will remove those comments. Not that I have an obligation to do that. I may have an obligation to report it. But because I operate in a private community, my private community understands those rules, and we have an active dialogue. An active dialogue. And that active dialogue is fantastic because I have people that are aligned with this kind of activity and that I engage them. And they engage me. It's two-way communication. I have another community in the private community, which is those people that don't necessarily agree with me, that want to be disruptive. Honestly, I don't have time for people that are not reasonable nor logical. You can comment all you want, but you're not going to deviate my time from supporting people that understand what rights, security, safety, and liberty is about. I'll give those people the ability to learn more, but I'm not going to engage. That's a waste of my time. Saw a video this morning of a guy that was addressing people in his YouTube comments, and I thought, I find it funny. Why would you even address these individuals that are not reasonable? Why are they occupying your time to communicate with them when they're not reasonable people? You want to talk to people that are reasonable. You don't need to address an audience of unreasonable people. Sounds a little hypocritical because I'm attributing police as being unreasonable. I want to invest for the bigger cause. I want to effect change in thinking of our relationship. I want to bridge the divide of disconnect, which is expanding. And it requires both sides coming together. It requires citizens to assert their rights and stand on those protections respectfully, lawfully. And it requires us to invest some time in educating those people that are in charge of disposing and enforcing things that are unlawful. But they have a responsibility to abide by the law, as do we. So I'm going to end the broadcast now. I hope everybody found this helpful. And if you feel so compelled to like, share, and or subscribe, and you can learn more about me and communicate with me directly through Facebook or that link. You can get more information. And I want to be an agent of change for the positive. Tony, good to see you. This is I think my broadcast has been totally monkeyed with, which is not unusual. We know this. So this is going up to YouTube and will be shared on YouTube. Take care, everybody.